Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Don Kortz. I'm Academic Dean here at Rockford Lutheran, and glad to have you here joining us tonight for this presentation on college planning, particularly for a minority population. And glad to see so many of you there on Zoom. Thank you for muting your microphone so we don't have any sorts of issues with background noise. We've got the mic checked out, and Caleb said he can hear me fine, so I'm hoping that continues to be the case. And we'll look forward to talking about some exciting things here relative to your future endeavors as it relates to the college search and college planning process. So our topics tonight are going to be set up to connect both with juniors and with seniors. We invite both grades to this event. A lot of the topics are obviously going to be common to both those grade levels. In some cases, the topics are going to be specific and only applicable to juniors. In other cases, some of them are going to be only applicable to seniors, but a lot of them are going to overlap. If you've been to some of our other junior, senior, and financial aid planning nights already this year, you'll see some of the same material. We usually have a much different audience at this event, so that's why I cover the highlights of some of those same topics. But at the same time, there are a number of things that we talk about that are specific to minority populations and their needs relative to the college search process and scholarship process.
How did you not know that it wasn't
Thank you for joining us tonight. And as we get started, let's begin with a word of prayer. Holy Father, we thank you that we have an opportunity to, as a school, to be involved in such an important aspect of these young people's lives. Bless us now as we continue to seek out that path that you've laid out for them. God, continue to bless them in that search, bless them in their preparation, bless them as they seek to be those disciples that you've created them to be, that we can work together as families and school and student to accomplish all that you've created them to do. In your name, amen. Okay, so we'll start talking about a little bit about college itself, and you can obviously see there's some advantages to what happens in terms of a student's earning potential as well as their employment potential as we take a look at the benefits of college education. So that's kind of where we begin in this process and understand that there are some really significant costs that are involved with the whole college opportunity. And we're blessed tonight to have Caleb McKay with us, who's the representative for our school from ISAC, the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. He works here in the Rock Valley District, but specifically with our school. And he is a tremendous resource for anything having to do with college application process, with financial aid process, pretty much anything that's a part of that whole element of getting ready for college. So he's going to have some time to talk tonight and kind of fill in the blanks for things that I don't cover, and provide you with some information on additional resources and just answer questions that you might have for the process that we're going to be talking about tonight. So, but that's obviously we see there's a significant cost involved with college, but we really need to look at that as investment. And so we see here from this chart that this is investment that's going to pay off for the rest of your student's life. And so, yeah, there's some upfront elements here that we need to be concerned about and that we need to make plans for and that sort of thing. But the return is potentially huge, not only in terms of what they're able to accomplish financially, but also the opportunity they have just to be, again, who God created them to be, to accomplish everything that they've got a passion to accomplish, to use the gifts that God gave them, and see that there's nothing that hinders them from accomplishing that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what colleges are looking for. And I always start talking about the fact that colleges are looking for graduates. And the assumption people have is colleges are looking for high school graduates. Well, that's true. What they're really looking for is college graduates, okay? As you think about this process, you realize that colleges don't want to bring in 5,000 freshmen and end up with 2,000 seniors 4 years later. That's going to really make them look bad as a school, and obviously their business office is not going to appreciate that a whole lot. So they're looking for students that they feel are going to come in and have the capability of graduating from their institution in 4 years. That's a big part of how colleges are ranked. And so as they're looking around for students, they're looking for students that are going to make them look good as a university. Now, how do they identify those students? Well, some of it's going to be things like GPA. And that's going to be even more significant this year because in addition to classes that they take, GPA is probably the key indicator because right now we're in a situation where standardized test scores are not always available. A lot of colleges decide not to emphasize the test scores, and so that means they're looking harder at everything else, which means they're looking harder at the GPA, they're looking harder at the classes that were taken, they're looking harder at the transcript. So that's why I always tell kids, no, every semester, every class, every grade is important because it's part of that GPA. The other thing to keep in mind as we're talking about test scores briefly, recognize that a lot of schools have gone test optional. So that means that you don't have to have a test score, but you can. Test blind would mean they don't want a test score. Even if you send them one, they're not going to look at it. Okay, so those are two different things, obviously. The other thing to keep in mind is that frequently when colleges are talking about the issue of not needing test scores, in other words, being test optional, they're typically talking about enrollment. Now recognize that those test scores are also extremely significant when it comes to scholarship opportunities. A lot of colleges are still looking at test scores as a part of the scholarship determination process. So you want to ask some questions about that as you're talking to different universities and looking at the issue of them being test optional. So just a little bit of something that you want to be aware of as you're hearing those terms and so on. It's obviously going to be, again, important to focus on the GPA, the classes that you took, the grades that you got, but also what did you do outside of the classroom? And this is where I think kids at our Rockford Lutheran have a real advantage, because as a smaller school, we offer a lot of activities. Now, some of those activities are limited right now, but if you've got a resume, if you've got a history that shows, yeah, but for the first 3 years, I did everything. And even though there's not a lot going on right now, I'm still doing something. I'm still in Key Club. I'm still in cross country. I'm still in, class office. I'm still whatever. And there's opportunities for you to get involved with things outside of school in the community as well. The benefit of that is colleges realize that if you're the type of student that really gets involved in what goes on in your high school experience, you're also more likely to be the type of student who's going to get really involved in your college experience. Now, if you got two different people that come to college, one of them goes to class every day, goes to dining hall, goes to the dorm, goes to class every day, goes to dining hall, goes to the dorm. They could be a pretty good student. Student B goes to class every day, goes to dining hall, goes and interacts with friends, goes and gets involved in college campus activities, gets involved in campus clubs, gets involved in campus intramural programs, gets involved in the culture of the community, of the university. Which of those students is going to be much more likely to be there 4 years later? Obviously, the one that got involved, the one that got engaged, because for them, this is more than just a place to go to class. For them, this is like life. This is where they live. This is where they've connected, and they've got relationships there. In many cases, really significant relationships. So colleges know that that person is a lot more likely to tough out the bumps in the road and to stay and to endure through whatever issues might come up, because they are connected at that school. So that's why they're looking for high school students that have done the same thing. So think about that, especially for you as juniors, as you're thinking about what sort of things can you be thinking about for down the road. That can be something in particular for you to spend some time working on, because that can be really, really significant for you. We've got options in terms of schools: 2-year schools, 4-year schools. Let me mention too that this slide deck will be available and the Zoom will be recorded and available for you to take a look at later, so you don't have to worry about taking all kinds of notes and everything. But as you take a look at different schools, there's obviously some advantages of a 2-year school. A lot of that has to do with cost and flexibility, and seeing that as kind of a transition from being at home all the time to being away at a big university all the time, that sort of thing. There's some downside to that as well, in terms of, that sense that I'm not really at college yet. It just feels kind of like I'm at high school plus. And some of that has to do with that lack of school community and school culture, social life, and that sort of thing. The other thing that I think is significant for us to keep in mind is that less than 10% of the people that go to a 2-year school ever end up with a 4-year education. Now, to be fair, that's because a lot of people that go to a 2-year school don't need a 4-year education, so that's obviously legit. But one of the things I get concerned about when I hear kids say, okay, I'm going to go to Rock Valley and then I'm going to go off to a 4-year university. Sometimes it happens, and that's good. But when you go to a two-year school, everybody is there for the most part thinking and planning, okay, I'm going to go here for 2 years and then I'm done. And I'm going on to something else. You go to a four-year university, as a freshman, you're immediately kind of caught up in the wave that says, look, we're here to get a four-year degree. And so there's a momentum that goes along with that when that's what your culture and your climate and your friends are all about and so on. And so that's one of the reasons why, the experience of being involved with a four-year school is significantly different in terms of actual completion of a four-year degree. So keep that in mind. Yeah, there's a lot of good reasons for doing a two-year school. And Rock Valley is a good two-year school. It's a very good school. A lot of opportunities, a lot of great different programs that they offer. And interestingly, they've got some really good programs that do connect directly to a four-year program. Thinking of things like engineering and nursing, which are big programs in our area. So, there's absolutely some great reasons to be considering something like Rock Valley. But there are some things you want to be concerned with too. And, one of the things I'll talk to kids about is, okay, you're going to Rock Valley. What are you doing next? Let's talk about how definite and how much we can narrow down those plans now. Let's talk about what school you want to go to 2 years from now. Let's talk about what four-year degree you're shooting for, and just kind of keep planting that seed in their mind that says, I'm going to Rock Valley, but I'm doing 4 years, and I'm going to be successful at that. So think about that. College visits are a little bit tough to do now, although some schools are offering them again. A lot of them are offering them virtually, but there are opportunities to do that, irrespective of whether you're going physically to the school. There are some ways in which you can talk to people, and talking to actual students, talking to the people who actually teach the classes, that sort of thing is always going to be helpful for you. So, there are ways that you can do that either physically or virtually. Keep in mind that for seniors, this is the time when your application should be in. Okay, I've told people from the time they're sophomores, when you arrive, August of your senior year, that's when your college search process is over. You're done searching, now it's time to do the applications. There are a lot of schools that have November 1st deadlines for early application. And that's when they have the most seats open. Obviously, that's when you have the best opportunity to be accepted. Keep in mind also, that's when they have all their scholarship money available. Okay, are you going to be able to apply to a school in January or February or March? Yeah, there won't be as many seats open, but if they're not a highly selective school, that won't be a big issue. But it's quite likely most of the scholarship money will be gone. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we get into some sections here on the scholarships in particular. Talk to financial aid people. That's something that you can do whether you visit the school or not, but it's a great thing to do if you can. And ask some questions about, are they need blind? In some cases where, you might be coming from a situation where you don't have a lot of financial need, are you still going to qualify for some other scholarship possibilities because of merit? And that could be everything from music to academics to athletics to et cetera. Okay, but those are some questions you want to ask about. You also want to make sure you're talking to schools about their programs, particularly programs that nowadays are more and more frequently requiring graduate degrees. So as you're talking about something like nursing or physical therapy that used to be, just 4-year degrees or less and that sort of thing. Now a physical therapist is requiring a doctorate, okay? Well, if that's something I want to go to, let's talk about that school's placement rate into graduate school for physical therapists. Let's talk about tests passed, the rates of students that successfully pass tests, NCLEX tests and so on for nursing. Those are things you want to ask about because some schools have much better rates than others. And, you want to ask about that because obviously you want to be at a place where you're going to be most well prepared. So those are important questions to ask. You also want to be thinking about what kind of programs does the school have for kids who are going to be going right from a bachelor's degree, right into a master's degree, right into a doctorate degree, et cetera. Because some schools have direct admit programs. And so if you're going into physical therapy at their school, you apply for their school as a freshman, and they'll take a look at your application. And if you tell them you're going into physical therapy, and they like your numbers and your test scores and your classes and all that sort of thing, they might say, okay, you know what? We're not only going to accept you into our school, we're going to accept you into our physical therapy program. because those are two different things actually, okay? In a lot of cases, you'll get accepted into a school as a freshman, and then you'll have till the end of your sophomore year to apply for your program, like a physical therapy program, or even in my case, an educational program. I didn't have to apply to my secondary education program until I was a second semester sophomore. Well, what happens if you get to that school and you get accepted at the school, but you don't get accepted into the program that you want? Okay, that's not so good, because now what do? You change programs, you change schools, etc. So thinking about what that looks like from the standpoint of a school that's going to immediately accept you into the program when you apply, there's some really huge advantages to that. You know, you don't have to worry about not getting into the program. You don't have to worry about not getting accepted into the graduate school, because they might tell you right off the bat that they're going to want to see your grades during your 4 years that you're there, obviously. But if they know that you're coming in with some pretty strong background, they're going to say, okay, you keep this up, and we're absolutely going to accept you into our graduate school for PT or whatever. Okay? So some important things to think about there as you're talking to schools. One of the things I like to mention too is, and this is for parents obviously more so, but kids somewhat too, you know, the distance that you go can be transformational. It can be something that helps you grow. A lot of people, the first thing they'll think about is they're thinking about college is, oh, this is kind of a scary thing, and not so sure how it's going to work. Don't know how far I want to get away from home. And that's okay. But at the same time, there's a lot of growing up that happens when you're out on your own and mom and dad are not an hour or 2 hours away, and whatever comes up, you've got to take care of it. And there's some advantages to that too. So think about that. My college experience, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I went to college in Seward, Nebraska. Back in the days of a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, that was an 18-hour drive. So my folks dropped me off in August, and I went back home for Christmas. I was good with that. It worked well for me. I grew up a lot that first semester. I think my parents kind of did too, to be honest. So think about that. Think about that. That's not an insignificant factor. Okay, so as you're visiting or as you're learning about the school in whatever fashion you can, you know, think about the culture of the campus. Each campus has its own sense and its own feel to it. A lot of that has to do with, are most of the people that go to school here residents, or are they commuters? You know, we frequently have taken a group of kids up to the Milwaukee area to visit some schools, and one of the things that we've done fairly regularly is visit Marquette and UW-Milwaukee. Not too far away from each other and that sort of thing. Very different schools. Very different schools in terms of the culture and the sense and the feel of the school. And, you know, you get that sense when you go there and visit. And some of it has to do with where they're at locationally, although both of those are really urban schools. You know, size makes a big difference. How many people are living there in residential versus how many commute. What are the sizes of the classes? You know, that becomes a significant factor as you're taking a look at state schools. And a lot of state schools will try to, you know, kind of make sure that they don't scare people away with that by giving you some averages and say, well, our average class size is 27. Well, that's true, but as a freshman, you might still end up with 6 classes that have got 150 kids in them. Okay, so, you know, for some people that works fine, and for others, not so much. But that's part of the culture of different kinds of schools. So think about those sorts of things. Campus size, location we talked about, affordability issues are obviously going to be very distinctive. You know, as you're taking a look at chances of being accepted, I always encourage kids, and this is for you primarily as juniors, you know, think about, okay, this is a school I would just absolutely love to go to. This is one of my top tier schools. Have 3 or 4 of those top tier schools that it's going to be hard to get into. It's going to be tough, but that's where I'd really like to go. So that's my top tier. And then my middle tier are schools that, okay, I'm going to have to work to get into these, but I'm better than 50% sure I can do it. And then have a third tier that's, okay, these are the schools I know I can get into. This is kind of a fallback plan. They're still good schools, but I know I can get accepted into those anytime I want to. So think about that as you're thinking about chances of being accepted. And again, just the overall look of the schools that you're going to. Obviously, you want to be concerned about the majors that are offered, make sure they're offering the things that you need, and that they've got a good background and a good facility for some of those sorts of things. The other thing that I'll mention to look for as you're thinking about campuses, and this is something that's becoming more and more important in the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, I think, is internship possibilities. Now, again, some of that's a little bit upended right now, but by the time you're juniors and seniors, likely things will look a little bit different. We certainly hope so. But in many cases, summer internships become those opportunities that you as a student have to start making connections that will turn into your first job. And, so you want to talk with the schools, you want to talk with them, but okay, so what do you do for internships? How do you help facilitate that, and so on? And so, that is a good question to ask, and a good thing to be kind of probing about a little bit, because you want to have an experience, an opportunity for an internship experience that is really going to grow you, obviously, but also is going to look really good on your resume, because a lot of times those internships, if they go well and you're comfortable with it and it's a good match and that sort of thing, will turn into your first job. Okay? Okay. One of the things that I talk about in terms of this whole school culture thing really brings us back to, okay, so why are we at Rockford Lutheran? What is it about Lutheran that brought us here as opposed to someplace else? And so there was a study that was done actually by a group of universities, Lutheran universities, comparing them to like the big flagship state schools like the UI Champagnes and UW-Madison's and those sorts of schools. Their data is not so much really a comparison of Lutheran universities with flagship schools. It's really a comparison of private universities versus big public flagship schools. So I have that report on the school website under Counselor's Corner. So I encourage you to take a look at that as you're thinking about, what's going to be the best fit for my kid, and what are some of the differences that exist between a private institution and a big state school. Because they're really significantly different. And some of the personal touches, some of this personal support and individual assistance that your student has benefited from in terms of their experience here at Rockford Lutheran, obviously is going to be much more likely to be a part of the programs that they're going to experience at a smaller private university as well. So it's a good report to take a look at and consider, some of the intangibles of a particular college experience. Okay, as we're thinking about moving beyond the search process and now making application, one of the things I've got resources here for are filling out resumes. The information, again, that's on here is going to be more and more important this year because of the situation with testing. So it's going to be important for you to really put together a thorough quality resume, not only for you to submit to the school, but also for you to provide to the people who are going to ask, you're going to ask to make your recommendations. Not all colleges require recommendations from teachers, counselors, that sort of thing, but quite a few do. If you're going on Common App, a lot of those schools do want some kind of recommendation. So what you can do is you can fill out the form, and this is some of the information that's on it. I've got copies of a resume form in the counselor's office. You can grab one of those, fill it out, answer some questions, give it to your teachers that are going to do your recommendations, give it to me. That'll help us put together a much more complete recommendation for you. Okay. Timeline-wise, you're really at the point where you should be narrowing down your college selections. You should have already applied, and you should be getting answers back from schools as seniors as to acceptance. So juniors, again, be thinking about the fact that you want to be ready to do that when you come back to school your senior year. There is still time to retake the ACT and SAT, possibly. The next ones that are available are in December, but the results usually come out in a couple weeks. So by early January, you'd have results to share with a potential school. So there are some opportunities for you to do that yet. We're scheduled to give both of those tests here in December. So, but I wouldn't wait too much longer to sign up, because I checked the ACT registration right now for the December 12th test. And the students that are not doing the writing test, those seats are all full. So I emailed ACT to try to get them open up some more seats. But that's the story of our situation this year. And again, you want to get your applications in before Thanksgiving. You want to be working on scholarship applications fairly soon as well. One of the things that Caleb will talk with you a little bit about is FAFSA. That opens up on October 1st, so that's open and available, and hopefully a bunch of people have already filled that out if you're seniors. It's going to be important to get that in as soon as possible, because one of the things that happens is some scholarship funds run out of money, We'll be talking here in a little bit about the MAP grants for the state of Illinois. Those open up when FAFSA does. If you're thinking about if there's any possibilities you're going to go to a school in Illinois, when you fill out your FAFSA, put some Illinois school on your FAFSA. That'll get you in line for MAP money, which could be $5,000+ a year. Okay, so really it's a pretty good grant. You don't necessarily end up having to go to that school. If you decide instead to go to another Illinois school, you're still in line for the MAP grant, so you're okay. But put an Illinois school on the FAFSA so that you're ready for that. But get into it now, because it's not unthinkable that that money will be gone by Thanksgiving and certainly by Christmas. Okay, so we don't want to wait. Like I said, in some cases it's okay to fill out an application in February, but there's going to be some downsides to that too, and a lot of it has to do with the scholarships. Okay, and then in your spring semester, second semester, senior year, that's when a lot more scholarship activity happens, and then you've got to come up with a final decision about what school you're actually going to, put down a deposit, and then you're committed and ready to go. Okay. On our side, our school will be working with you in terms of sending transcripts. All that's done electronically now through Parchment. As seniors, I've already set that up with you guys. As juniors, we'll do that when you come back in August. I provide them with a school profile, which gives a little bit of information about our school and how many of our kids typically go to college and what our grading scale is like and those sorts of things. Counselor recommendation forms, you need to be taking care of those, as well as teacher recommendations. And then recognize too that you'll always have to send in final transcripts. So those grades that you're getting second semester, senior year, even though you've already been accepted at college, they still count, they still matter, because they're going to require a final transcript after you're done. Okay. On the student side, most applications now are online. And so one of the tricky things there is to make sure you've got all the parts sent in. A lot of colleges have some nice little gauges set up and that sort of thing to show you, okay, you've got this done, but you don't have this done. You got this done and this done, but not this, and so on. So you want to keep an eye on those sorts of things, because a lot of people have gotten tripped up that there's 5 things they want you to turn in, and you can't imagine why they didn't accept you until you look and realize you only turned in 4 of them. If application is not complete, you're not gonna be accepted, obviously. Okay. Test scores and that sort of thing will frequently be they'll always be a part of your transcript that we send. In some cases, colleges want to get them directly from ACT, so that'll be something you need to work out with them. FERPA is that opportunity that you, as young adults, have now to be responsible for your own education, which means your parents don't necessarily get grade information and so on. But my take on that is, if mom and dad are helping pay the bill, you should sign off on FERPA so that they can get the information from the school as well. Okay. College essays, again, not all schools require this, but those that do, they're going to be looking at it harder this year because they have less to look at. So there's some helpful information about college essays. You can Google, there's a guy called College Essay Guy, really offers some nice resources, most of them free, and that sort of thing for working on college essays, or information about it on Counselor's Corner. So feel free to look that up. You know, here's some key points for you to think about in terms of what your essay is going to look like. We'll talk a little bit about finances for college. Obviously, private institutions are more expensive than public institutions if you look at sticker price. Okay, one of the things to realize, paying for a college education is not exactly like buying a used car, but it's close. Okay, nobody pays a sticker price. So one of the things that I want to make sure that people keep in mind as they're going into this process, don't think that just because you spent a lot of money sending your kid to Rockford Lutheran and paying tuition here, that there's no way you're going to have enough money to pay for a college education at a private school. So it's really not true. There are a lot of kids that end up going to a private university, a good quality private university, for less money than they would pay at a state university. And a lot of that just has to do with how the schools handle their scholarship programs, and we'll talk a little bit about that. FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. That's what everybody needs to get filled out right away in October 1st. There's where you go to fill it out. Studentaid.ed.gov is all sorts of other information about student financial aid and scholarships and so on. Gentlemen will need to check into the selective service process, so make sure you take care of that. A couple of terms to know. EFC is expected family contribution. So in other words, basically FAFSA looks at your tax records from a year ago, not this year, not last year, or the year before that, and says, this is about how much your family should be able to afford to send your kid to college. It doesn't have anything to do with how much the college costs. If all your family can afford is $1,000 a year to send your kid to college, you could be going to Rock Valley and you'll qualify for $1,000 of aid. You can be going to U of I and you've only got $1,000 that you're going to be able to contribute. So the college is legit in trying to come up with the total rest of the balance. You're also maybe going to have to come up with some of the rest of the balance in terms of just money or loans or whatever. But the idea behind it is your expected family contribution is the same no matter what school you go to. So don't think that because your expected family contribution is low, you have to go to a school that only costs $1,000 a year, et cetera. Student aid report is the report that you get back from FAFSA that indicates how much aid you're eligible for in terms of grants, loans, those sorts of things. A couple different kinds of scholarships you need to keep in mind. One is need-based, and that's going to be primarily based on the information that comes from your FAFSA. And the other is merit-based. So that deals with other elements of your student and you as a student, dealing with things like, again, artistic, athletic, other abilities, academic abilities, that sort of thing. One thing for you to really make note of, this is where private universities really have some money to invest. Again, they get graded as well on how many people come into their school and leave successfully. And so they're gonna use their endowments, their funds that they have available to make sure that they're attracting the very best students that they can. And in many cases, what you're gonna do in something like this is you're gonna stack a lot of different scholarship funds on top of one another. You might qualify for a Pell Grant because of your income on FAFSA. You might qualify for some guaranteed student loans because of your income on FAFSA. You might qualify for some academic aid because you've got a GPA that's at a certain level or your test scores are at a certain level. You also might be a musician, so you qualify for something there if you want to be in the band, that sort of thing. I had a son that was going to Valparaiso University to be an engineer, and they sent him information about music scholarship. We weren't totally sure why at first, but they said, well, most of our musicians are also engineers, so we just kind of send that information along anyway. And he said, well, yeah, I like to play trumpet. They said, great, do you want to be in the band? Well, sure. All right, why don't you come and audition? He auditioned, $5,000 a year to play trumpet in the Valparaiso band. I hate to tell him he would have done it for nothing because he just loved music and wanted to be in the band. If they're going to give him $20,000 over 4 years to do it, I'm good with that. But those sorts of things can just get stacked like that, okay? And that's where you end up being in a situation where your college education could actually be cheaper than your high school education. We do have some instances of that. So as you take a look at the money and where it comes from, the scholarships and the grants and the state grants and so on are what we would consider free money. Scholarships and grants don't have to be paid back. Then when you're getting into things like loans, then obviously you're dealing with things that would have to be paid back. Students can take out loans, parents can take out loans, et cetera. If you have other information on that, we can talk about that another time. Don't want to get too caught up in the details of that, but those are basically the two sources of funding. How much can you get? So there's the MET grant information that we were talking about before. It's only for going to school in Illinois, but $5,300 a year, that's pretty good. But you got to get in line early. So plan on getting that FAFSA turned in right away. And college financial aid offices. Again, I talked about the fact that if you're visiting a school, talk to their financial aid officer. There are going to be people that are going to put you in touch with all sorts of other possibilities in terms of aid for your student. And there are all sorts of other scholarship search opportunities. Studentaid.gov we talked about. There's a whole number of other avenues that you can pursue on that. We'll see some of them here in just a little bit. Federal student aid, you got a Pell Grant up to $6,300. Then you got things like work study, where you get paid for doing work at the university. Subsidized and unsubsidized loans. Subsidized means you don't have to pay interest right away. The interest doesn't get charged to you until after you graduate. With unsubsidized loans, the interest starts accumulating as soon as you take out the loan. And then there's loans for parents that are available as well. Sometimes they're pretty good rates. Sometimes you can get better rates someplace else. So always check into that. So these are a lot of scholarship opportunities that are specific to students that are coming from a minority household. And so you can take a look at those. Again, these are all going to be posted on the school website, so you'll be able to take a look at those later. One of them I want to talk about in particular just a little bit because this is an organization that I just really appreciate what they do. RAM is the Rockford Area Minority Management Association, and they do a scholarship process for African American students, high school students. And the thing that I really like about this organization is their process is pretty thorough. And they've got to have letters of recommendation. They got all kinds of school information they require. But the thing that I appreciate the most, they do an individual survey, an individual interview with each student. And when you think about, this student being in a situation where now as a high school senior, they've got to sit down with some other African-American professional men and women and be grilled, so to speak, as to why do you deserve to get this scholarship as opposed to all the scores of other people that have applied. That's a pretty intense experience. But you know what? The first time they go for a job interview, it's going to look a whole lot different for them because they're going to walk into that saying, you know what? I did something like this once before. I can do this again. So that experience, I think, is huge. And so I really encourage all the African-American seniors to go to that website right now. The information is right there. It's open now. It's a process. It takes work. And, they're not going to give you a full ride. It's not going to be, huge sums of money. But the experience of it for you as an individual is what I think is really significant. So really want to encourage you to take a look at that in particular. And so you see a number of other scholarship sites there as well. Here's some more information about historically black college universities with conditional admit programs. In other words, there are situations where some schools will say, you know what, okay, your GPA is not quite what we typically want it to be, but we know something about the school you went to and we know something about the classes you took. We think you're going to do fine. We'll admit you on these and these and these conditions, but keep in mind, it's in that university's best interest that you as a student are successful. And so they're going to go out of their way to make sure that they do what they need to do to make sure that you're successful and that you're going to leave there in 4 years with a degree as well. Okay? So, colleges are struggling with the fact that our minorities are underrepresented on college campuses. And so many of them are really serious about trying to do something about that. And so they're opening up things like conditional admit programs and so on to try to facilitate more and more applicants. And in order to make that work, they know they've got to provide the support and assistance for those students to be successful. So look at these opportunities. There's some good schools here. And there's a lot more around like that. I've got some details here about some particular schools in our region and particular programs that they have for people going into certain majors, et cetera. So we'll just kind of go through this quickly. Again, it's going to be available for you to see later online. But these are opportunities for people both in terms of money for while they're at the university, but also connected to kind of making sure they do have jobs when they get out as well. So this is at Western. So some good support. And again, a lot of private universities as well have some very strong diversity programs and staff to help facilitate success of students of color as well. Some additional resources of some things that we've talked about here. Relative to scholarships. Now, the Community Foundation of Northern Illinois is an organization that is a kind of like a collecting bucket for hundreds of scholarship opportunities for students around just Northern Illinois. In other words, it's just like Boone, Winnebago, Ogle County. So when you apply for some of those scholarships, you're not applying and competing with the rest of the world. And there's many scholarships that are very specific on who they're going to. Might have to do with what city you're from, might have to do with what school you're going to, might have to do with what you're going to major in, might have to do with what teams you're involved in or what activities you're involved in high school. A lot of very specific criteria for those scholarships, but because of that, there's not that much competition. So this is a great organization for you to connect with. I've got information on them here. We'll have more information. Their process will be getting opened up here in just a little bit. But Community Foundation gives away like $300,000+ a year. And they've kind of connected with a couple of other agencies here and formed a consortium of sorts with the public library and so on. And I think they're looking at about $500,000 in scholarships they'll be giving out this year. So that's definitely something that you want to look at and investigate seriously. These are just some general resources for college search, career and majors determination, as well as some scholarship funding and so on. This is how you can stay connected with me and what we have going on here. This year, one of the things that we're really spending a lot of time on is investing a lot of our resources in our Facebook page for our guidance office. I get a lot of application information. I get a lot of programs about summer pre-college programs. So for those of you that are juniors, you should be taking a look at that, because if you've got a school that particularly is like your tier 1 school that you know is going to be challenged to get into, if they've got a summer program, a pre-college kind of a program, you know, you go there for a week and you know, you get involved in engineering, or you get involved in nursing, or you get involved in whatever it is that you're thinking about going into, architecture, et cetera, history, et cetera. That can be a great way to get your foot in the door, because you're not only checking out the school's checking out you. So look for those sorts of things. We post that on the guidance office Facebook page. And a lot of other scholarship opportunities that come in, things just come across my desk, you know, virtually almost every day, where I get some kind of scholarship, and we'll just post it on the school website, on the guidance office Facebook page, because it just is the most cost-effective way for us to get that out to as many people. So please look at that page, check out that page frequently. Okay. These are some other ways to stay connected. Remind.com is another tool that we use. Also want to make sure you take a look. We do have the Illinois Career Information System, which includes some test prep. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Your login information is here so that you can get in and take a look at those sorts of things as you have opportunity. Those are some really key tools, especially for you as juniors, as you're looking at preparation for where you're going from here. Okay. All right, I'm going to stop the screen share now, and we're going to ask Caleb to jump in and go ahead and talk about anything else that he thinks would be good for us to talk about.
Okay, great. Thank you, Don. That was a lot of great information, and obviously we didn't expect you to have memorized everything we're going to talk about tonight, or that we have talked about tonight. So please feel free to reach out to either Don or myself. I am going to put my contact information in the chat. So if anyone is there in person, I'm not sure, you can take a picture maybe, or Don can give that to you. I'm just going to touch on a couple of topics, but one thing that I think is fairly obvious this year is that a lot of things have and are changing. So a lot of the typical procedures or timelines that would be normal for the process are just different. We're having to make a lot of adjustments. Schools are still figuring out a lot of how they're going to kind of work around the current circumstances. So if you have any questions, or if you are unable to maybe meet a requirement or a deadline, the best thing you can do is directly contact somebody from that school, either in the admissions office or financial aid office, or somebody else, and get the answer that you need. You know, if it's something that you're unable to meet a requirement, but you are really interested in the school or a program, especially if your inability to meet those requirements is due to the COVID or pandemic situation, let them know and reach out and ask if they can make any accommodations and what kind of changes that they can make. So a lot of schools are being fairly flexible They're just having to understand that circumstances are kind of crazy at the moment. But the best thing you can do right now is communicate strongly. So continue to be checking your email regularly or your phone. If your student has created a student portal on a school's website, make sure they're checking that regularly for any updates, either to COVID or just to the admission and financial aid process. So I'm going to talk a little bit about financial aid, just briefly. I know Don mentioned the FAFSA and applications for financial aid. That is currently open for current college students or current high school seniors who will be going to college next year. So it opened in October, and it's available for students going to school starting in the fall of 2021. And now the first step in that is creating an FSA ID. That's just your account for the FAFSA. You're going to use this to log in and to sign off on the FAFSA. So this is your account for the FAFSA. This is how you log in and check the status and continue the application. It's also how you're going to sign electronically to submit it over the internet. And now there is, this year, we have a new application called the Alternative Application, or the RISE Act. The alternative application for Illinois financial aid is available for students who are either undocumented or students who are transgender and were unable to register for selective service. Because those students are ineligible to complete the FAFSA, this application is essentially the same thing. It parallels the FAFSA, but it's available for those students who are ineligible. So if you aren't sure if you are eligible for the FAFSA, or maybe you should do the alternative application, feel free to reach out to me. And again, my contact information is in the chat, and Don has my contact info as well. So we can have that conversation and we can walk you through it. I will also assure you that any communication you have with me is confidential, so I don't share anything about the students and families that I work with anyone else. Yeah, so if anyone has any questions about the FAFSA, how you can work on that application or the alternative application, please let me know. One thing I will say is, if the student is undocumented, they will most likely have to do the alternative application. If the parent is undocumented, that has no bearing or impact on the student's financial aid eligibility. So if, for example, a student is a citizen or a resident, but the parent is undocumented, you can go ahead and do the FAFSA. So it will ask for the parent's social security number on the FAFSA. If they don't have one, just for the parents, you just put all zeros, and that works just as well. One more resource I'd like to point out, and Don may have touched on this, but the TRIO programs, it's a federal program that kind of works within a lot of schools here in the US. That's TRIO, TRIO programs. That is a program, and it's a federal outreach and student services program that's designed to identify and provide services to individuals from disadvantaged backgrounds. So they work very closely with students, first generation students and low income families, to kind of help them through the college admissions process and financial aid, and give them the resources that they need to succeed in college. And Don did touch on the Community Foundation of Northern Illinois. I want to just talk about that for a couple more seconds. He brought up a lot of great resources, and this is one that I have a partnership with. So I do have maybe some more information on this organization than a few others in the area, but they really do have a ton of scholarships in just the Northern Illinois area, and I don't think that really includes Chicago. So really, that's like Rockford is right in the heart of that. And they're launching a new website. I'm not sure if it's public or available yet, So you heard it here first, but that's going to be a really good resource to use to find all of the scholarships that they have and all the contact information for different scholarships that they partner with and that they offer through their services. And one of the things that's really nice about the Community Foundation of Northern Illinois is that their system has where you submit one application can be an application for multiple. So you don't have to go on their website and say, okay, I'll apply for this one and I'll apply for that, and then I'll do an application for that. You do one application, build one profile, and then submit that to multiple scholarships. So it really saves a lot of time, and they really do have a lot of money that they're offering students. And every year they have a scholarship fair in December. This year, and we are still working out the details on how this is going to look, it's going to be virtual on December 8th at 6:00 p.m. I recommend putting this on your calendars. And once the link has been made available for this event, and once we've ironed out some of the details, we'll share this link with the counselor. So Don should get access to this information, and he can share that with you. And this is an opportunity to just kind of browse and not only see what scholarships there are, but actually have conversations with the people representing those different scholarships. So that's a really great opportunity. And I'm just gonna reiterate that communication is very important in this process, but especially now, especially this year. Check your email, make sure your students are checking their emails, their school emails, and also their personal emails for whatever they're using with communication with different colleges or what they've used on the FAFSA. Because a lot of important information is going to be coming in through their email or through the student portal that they've created if they had to create an ID or a portal on the school's website. If you ever have any questions, or if you aren't sure about something, always feel free to reach out. Again, my name is Caleb McKay. I work with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. We are all about financial aid and college access in the state of Illinois. And I say that we work with students in Illinois. It doesn't matter if you're going to school in Wisconsin or Alabama or anywhere. We're here to help you through this process, through financial aid and through the college admissions and applications. And always feel free to reach out to me, but also it'll be important to have direct communication with somebody from the school. So say you have you have completed your FAFSA and you've listed the school on there, and then you go and apply to that school and you haven't heard anything for weeks or months. You can reach out to me, but the best thing that you can do in that situation is to reach out to somebody from that school, because they have access to your information, in that school's records, and they can see if they are waiting for you to send a document to them, if there was an error in your application, they can see that. And they have the most relevant information as far as your relationship with the school. Once again, my name is Caleb McKay. I work with the Illinois Student Assistance Commission. I'll say my contact information out loud for anyone listening, but it's also in the chat, and Don has my information as well if you need to reach out, if you need to reach to me. So Caleb McKay, that's CALEB MCKAY. My phone number is 815-666-9221. You can call or text me. And my email is caleb.mckay@illinois.gov. So that's caleb.mckay@illinois.gov. And I just saw a question, who is hosting the scholarship fair? That is hosted by the Community Foundation of Northern Illinois, although they're also partnering with Rock Valley College and some representatives from the Illinois Student Assistance Commission, myself included. So I will be present most likely during this workshop. I might be giving a presentation, or available for a Q&A. We still don't know the details, but those are the three main entities that are going to be a part of that. And then Don, if you want to add anything else, feel free. And I think we'll also take some questions too.
Okay, thank you, Caleb, for all that information. Appreciate that. And you know, the reason why Caleb's literally giving you his phone number and email is that it's okay if you're doing FAFSA and you get hung up on something. Yeah, just call his number and he will talk to you one-on-one and work your way through that sort of thing. That's the kind of service he's here to provide. And if he doesn't have the answer, he'll find somebody that does. So he's a phenomenal resource for us and for each of you. So absolutely don't hesitate to contact him, because you know, that's why he's doing what he's doing, and the more people that contact him, you know, the more impressed his boss will be and all that sort of thing. So that's all good. I would reiterate too what Caleb mentioned about contacting representatives at the universities. Something to keep in mind is we've had somewhere in the neighborhood about 40 universities have already visited this year, either virtually or live. And so we've got contact information for all those reps. So if you don't have that information, I can probably find that for you pretty quickly from those 40 plus schools. And in a lot of cases, a kid will just come in and we'll just sit down and search through a school's website and we'll find the person for him to talk to. So yeah, no problem with getting that information, but that was great advice, Caleb. So, okay, any other questions? Anybody wants to put in the chat?
If anyone is typing right now, I will just go ahead and also throw out this plug that ISAC, the agency that I work for, has a texting service. So if you don't want to talk to Don or myself and you'd rather text for a quick answer, that's totally fine. We have a texting service. I've copied and pasted it down here, and I can send this to Don as well. But this is a really good resource that you can get some pretty quick answers via text, and they do send out occasional reminders. So for instance, on October 1st, you might get a text saying the FAFSA is open. And these reminders are very occasional. They're really maybe 2 or 3 times a semester, but they're just really to let you know, like, hey, the important things are happening, like scholarship deadlines are approaching. Have you done your scholarships? So that number is 815-242-4630. And the first 3 messages you'll get from that number is going to be automated. So it asks for your name, your high school, and your grade level. And you can say parent if you're a parent for the grade level. After that point, everything is communicated by a real person. His name is Matthew.
Okay, great. Haven't seen any other questions. Thank you everyone for joining us. Always feel free, obviously, to be in contact with me if you have questions or concerns about anything coming up. And thank you again, Caleb, for your time with us tonight and everything you share and do for our students. And thanks to everyone else for coming. And have a good night.